In the gentle evening of rain, as if the whole world stood silent, holding a secret, Sayori felt for the first time that a mother's hands sometimes write the fate of the future. She sat in front of her son Haru, and the ancient ring in her palm shone in the cool light of the rain, the same ring that had kept the promise of love, loyalty, and trust for generations. Sayori took a deep breath and extended the ring to Haru, and her voice had the weight that only a mother can know. This ring is the trust of generations. To give it to the woman you truly love. The quiet piano music playing in the background of that moment seemed to herald the storm of times to come, a story that began today, but the end was yet to change many hearts. Time moved forward like the fast-flowing scenes of an anime, the lights of Haru's wedding, the rush of new relationships, the colors of laughter and happiness that fill a mother's heart but often leave it behind. Sayori watched these moments from afar, as if the spectacle of her own life was playing out on a silent screen. Gradually, Haru's busyness increased, as did the distance, and one day Sayori found herself sitting alone at home, as if even her voice had been lost in the mists of time. Yet there was a peace in her heart, that the ring, which she considered the soul of generations, Haru must have kept safe somewhere, like a sacred memory. Little did she know that time not only increases distance, but also creates secrets. It was an ordinary day, but fate had decided to change the map of Sayuri's world that day. The door opened with a soft sound, and Yumi, her daughter-in-law, entered with a pleasant smile, but Sayuri's eyes did not stop at her face. They slipped straight to her hands. The next moment, her heart started beating in her ears, as if some hidden alarm had suddenly come to life. The camera formed an anime frame in her mind, zoomed in, the same ring shining on Yumi's finger. A shock overlay animation ran before Sayuri's eyes, her breath seemed to stop for a moment. She had never imagined that the thing she had considered her son's trust would be shining so freely in someone else's hands today. And behind that glow, there was definitely a story hidden that was going to shake her. The world around Sayori suddenly blurred, as if someone had blurred the background in an anime scene with a single stroke, and all other sounds had been submerged underwater. All that remained was the shining sight of the ring, and her own heartbeat that sounded like an alarm bell. How is this possible? Her mind echoed. Haru said he would take care of it. Did he give it to Yumi? But the next moment, the thought pushed her into even deeper anxiety. Or, is there another story? The presence of the ring was no longer just an ornament, it had become a question whose answer could shake her entire being, and Sayori knew very well that some truths were not easy to face. Over the next few days, Sayori began to notice these small signs that had previously been invisible but were now drawing her attention with all their might. Every time Yumi approached the ring, she would immediately divert the conversation in another direction, the slight artificiality in her laughter, the restlessness of her hands, everything was hiding a strange secret. On the other hand, Haru also avoided meeting her eyes, as if there was a burden in his heart that he was afraid to even touch with his tongue. Every time he would quickly change the subject, suddenly get up or make up an excuse to be busy. The shadow of anxiety in Sayori's heart began to deepen, and dark shading began to waver at the edges of the scene in anime style, the same feeling that tells you that the truth is hidden somewhere, and that truth is going to come to light sooner or later, even if no one is ready for the consequences. Finally, the night came when Sayori felt that it was no longer possible to keep the question buried in her heart in silence. The lights in the house were dim, the curtains rustled with the light breeze outside, and an unknown tension floated in the air. Haru was sitting in the drawing room, but his face was clearly showing the anxiety that a person feels when the truth is about to knock on his door. Sayori slowly stepped forward, sat down in front of him, took a deep breath, and then asked the question that had been burning her heart for many days. Haru, how did that ring end up with Yumi? I gave it to you, as a sign of trust. These words froze the atmosphere of the room, the trembling in Haru's eyes, the incoherence in her breathing, and the confession hidden in the silence that had not yet been spoken. But Sayori's heart had already felt that she would not wake up that night without an answer. Haru's silence was no less than an answer for Sayori, but when he finally lowered his eyes and said in a weak, breaking voice, "Mummy, I sold that ring." It was as if the noise of the entire world had stopped in a single moment. The clear shattering SFX of a heartbreak echoed through the air in anime style, the sound one only hears from within, when trust takes its last breath. Sayori's hands trembled, as if the weight of the ring had now settled deep within her soul, not in her palm. After a while, Haru's tongue reached a trembling explanation. He confessed that there had been a time when he was in dire financial straits, that pressure and shame would not let him tell the truth, and he had turned in helplessness to the one thing that was most precious to him. But to Sayuri, it was not just a jewel, but the legacy of generations and the trust of a mother, now scattered across the earth. Sayori looked at her son, but her eyes no longer held the tenderness that had always supported Haru. These eyes were wounded today, heavy, and filled with a brokenness that even words could not contain. Her lips trembled, but the sentence still came out, softly but with all its intensity. "You sold your trust, Haru." As if someone had dimmed all the lights in the room, heavy stringed sad music echoed in the background, each note sounding like the beating of Sayori's wounded heart. Shadows of regret trembled in Haru's eyes, but that regret did not diminish the depth of the wound that a mother felt at that moment. That night, Sayori realized for the first time that sometimes the heart does not just break, it also shatters in silence. The next morning, as the soft rays of sunlight spread across the floor of the house, Yumi hesitantly walked towards Sayuri, holding the same ring in her hands that had been the wound. "In Sayuri's heart until yesterday." Yumi's voice trembled as she said that she was ashamed to know everything, and that if Sayuri wanted it, she should take the ring back immediately. For a moment, the old pain in Sayuri's heart rose, but then she took a deep breath. The storm of last night had taught her another truth. She gently extended her hand to Yumi and said slowly, "Now this is your trust. I have learned that relationships are worth more than things." This decision seemed to lighten the load on the air, and for the first time, Sayuri felt that sometimes letting go was not weakness, but the first step to healing. From that moment on, her wounds began to heal slowly, but truthfully. After releasing the ring from her heart, Sayori began to see her life from her own perspective for the first time, not in admiration of a mother, nor in need of a son, but as a woman who was also the protagonist of her own story. She reawakened the passions that had once been buried under responsibilities. She took up a brush, began painting, and the colors gave her the peace that the turbulent waves of relationships had taken away. She gradually began to go out, meet new people, make new friends, and each encounter lightened the layer of loneliness that had settled on her heart a little more. Above all, she began to recognize herself, that she was not just someone's mother, not someone's mother-in-law, but a complete human being whose happiness was her own responsibility. In this new journey, Sayori learned that sometimes the healing of life begins when a person learns to lovingly reconnect the broken parts. Finally, the moment has come when Sayori has emerged from her wounds and moved towards her light. In slow motion, the scene is bathed in the soft and warm colors of the anime. She walks with lonely but contented steps towards the distant horizon, where the pale orange light of the sun promises a new beginning. On her face is the smile that comes after suffering, strong, silent and telling. The wind touches her hair, and in the background a soft but deep voice narrates, "Sometimes letting go is the only cure, and a person finds their true strength only when they learn to value themselves." The camera slowly rises, the scene changes into a panorama where Sayori, a small figure, does not get lost in the countless paths of her world, but rather moves towards rewriting her identity on those same paths. And so the story ends not at a closed door, but at an open horizon. Relationships are not based on things, but on trust and understanding. And sometimes a person becomes stronger only when they learn to let go of broken relationships peacefully instead of holding on tightly.